The first jolt hit my old dog Biscuit so hard he yelped and collapsed in the grass, twitching. I ran outside barefoot, screaming, only to see a brand new electric fence humming where my garden used to be. My name is Daniel Reyes, and that fence sat 3 full feet inside my property line. The woman who built it stood on her porch, sipping lemonade, smiling like she'd won a war I didn't know we were fighting. Her name was Karen Whitfield, president of the Brookhaven Estates Homeowners Association, and she owned every inch of that neighborhood in her mind. I moved to Brookhaven 2 years earlier with my daughter Emma, chasing a quiet life after my divorce. The houses were pretty, the lawns were green, and the HOA newsletter promised a community built on respect. I should have read the fine print, because respect in Karen's dictionary only flowed one direction. At first, the violations were small. A mailbox painted the wrong shade of navy, grass cut a half-inch too long. I paid every fine without complaint, just wanting to keep the peace for Emma's sake. Then Karen started showing up unannounced, measuring my hedges with an actual tape measure, muttering about standards. My neighbor Samantha Cole, a paralegal who'd lived there 8 years, warned me Karen had chased 3 families out already. "She doesn't lose," Samantha said over coffee. "She just wears people down until they sell and run." I laughed it off then. I didn't know yet how far Karen was willing to go. The trouble truly began when Karen claimed the survey stakes on my property were off by a few feet. She insisted the HOA's original 1998 plat map placed the boundary differently than my deed did. I asked to see this mysterious map. She said it was being reviewed and hung up on me. 2 weeks later, contractors showed up in her backyard, unloading fence posts and coils of thin silver wire. "Just a decorative border," Karen told me, avoiding my eyes completely as the trucks rumbled past. Decorative borders don't need warning signs about voltage. I should have noticed that detail sooner. Within days, the fence was up, cutting straight through what I'd always mowed as my own backyard. Biscuit, curious as always, nosed the wire and got the shock that started this entire war. I marched over, furious, demanding Karen remove it immediately before someone got seriously hurt. She smiled that thin, practiced smile and said, "That's HOA land now, Daniel. You'll want to check your paperwork." I called the county assessor's office that same afternoon, hands shaking as I dialed. The clerk pulled my deed and confirmed the boundary was exactly where I'd always believed, 3 feet past that fence. Karen, it seemed, had drawn her own private map and convinced herself it was law. I printed the deed, marched back over and slid it across her porch table like a trump card. She barely glanced at it. "Deeds get amended," she said. "HOA covenants supersede individual paperwork sometimes." That was a lie, and I suspected even she knew it, but she said it with total confidence. Samantha overheard the whole exchange from her yard and came over looking pale. "Daniel, she tried the same move on the Alvarez family 2 years ago," she whispered. "They just left instead of fighting." That night, I sat at my kitchen table and made a decision. I would not be the next family to leave. I started a folder. Photos of the fence, timestamps, the deed, every email Karen had ever sent me. Samantha offered to help off the books, since her firm technically represented the HOA's insurance carrier. "I can't officially take your case," she said, "but I can tell you exactly where to look." We requested the HOA's official records under the community's own bylaws, which promised transparency to all members. 038. The board lost the original survey the very week I requested it. "Convenient," Samantha said dryly. I filed a complaint with the county for the unpermitted electric fence, since HOA land can't be electrified without inspection. An inspector came out, took one look at the humming wire and immediately red-tagged the whole structure. Karen wasn't home for the visit, a detail that felt suspicious even then. She returned 2 hours later, saw the tag and stormed straight to my door, pounding like the police. "You went behind my back," she shouted, loud enough that 3 neighbors stepped onto their porches to watch. "I went to the county," I said calmly. "That's not behind anyone's back. That's the law." She threatened to fine me for harassment of a board member, which wasn't even a real HOA violation. I almost laughed, except nothing about live wires near a child's backyard felt funny. Emma, only 9, had started asking why the neighbor lady hated us so much. I didn't have a good answer yet, only a growing folder of evidence and a knot in my stomach. That week, Karen sent a cease and desist letter, printed on official HOA letterhead, demanding I stop defaming her. Samantha read it and snorted. This isn't even legally binding. She's bluffing to scare you into silence. But the bluff worked on other neighbors. People stopped waving. Some crossed the street to avoid me. Karen had spent years cultivating an image as the neighborhood's protector, and I was now the outsider disrupting peace. I realized then this wasn't just about a fence. It was about who controlled the narrative. So I started recording every interaction, every meeting, every claim Karen made in front of witnesses. At the next HOA meeting, I stood up and asked calmly to see the original 1998 plat map. Karen's face flickered, just for a second, before she recovered her composure. "It's being digitized," she said smoothly. An older resident, Mr. Petrov, muttered under his breath. "She said that for 3 years now." That comment landed in the room like a small bomb, and I filed it away carefully. I left that meeting knowing one thing for certain. Karen Whitfield was hiding something bigger than a fence. The following morning, Mr. Petrov knocked on my door, holding a dusty manila folder under his arm. "I kept copies," he said, "back when Karen's husband first drew these lines himself, before he passed." Inside was the real 1998 survey, stamped, signed, and completely different from what Karen claimed. Her late husband, Frank Whitfield, had been the original developer, and he'd drawn generous lot lines for buyers. Karen had spent years quietly correcting those lines whenever a new family moved in unaware. "She's been doing this since Frank died," Petrov said. "Nobody wanted to fight a grieving widow." That single sentence rearranged everything I thought I understood about her. Karen wasn't just controlling. She was systematically stealing strips of land, lot by lot, house by house. I asked Petrov why he'd never reported it. He looked ashamed. "I was scared of the fines," he admitted. That fear, I realized, was exactly the weapon Karen had been swinging for years. Samantha took photos of Petrov's real survey and cross-referenced it with county archives that afternoon. The numbers matched my deed exactly. Karen's version matched nothing except her own backyard's expansion. "This isn't a boundary dispute anymore," Samantha said quietly. "This might be fraud." I felt something shift in my chest. Not just anger now, but resolve. I contacted 2 other former residents who'd moved for personal reasons, according to old HOA newsletters. One of them, a woman named Priya, answered my email within an hour, practically vibrating with anger. "She did the exact same thing to us," Priya wrote. "We just didn't have the energy to fight." Priya still had her old HOA correspondence saved, including a threat almost identical to mine. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Small disputes, manufactured maps, exhausted families, quiet departures, expanding Whitfield property. I started building a timeline, pinning documents to a corkboard like some obsessive detective. Emma asked if I was solving a mystery. In a strange way, I was. Karen, sensing something had shifted, tried a new tactic. Charm. She showed up with a fruit basket, apologizing sweetly for any miscommunication about the fence. "Let's put this behind us," she said, smiling wide enough to show all her teeth. I thanked her for the basket and told her the county inspection would proceed regardless. Her smile vanished instantly, replaced by something colder, something I hadn't seen from her before. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she said quietly, before turning and walking away. That line stuck with me for days. Sounded less like a warning and more like a confession. I decided to request Karen's HOA financial disclosures, since board members must report conflicts of interest. The paperwork took weeks to arrive, delayed by administrative errors that felt increasingly deliberate. When it finally came, one line jumped off the page immediately. Karen had approved a boundary maintenance fund that quietly paid contractors to move fences onto neighboring lots. The fund had existed for 6 years, hidden inside routine landscaping budgets nobody questioned. I sat frozen at my kitchen table, realizing the scale of what she'd built. This wasn't one bad neighbor. This was a system engineered patiently house by house. Samantha confirmed the fund's payments matched dates when at least 4 families had voluntarily relocated. "She's been land grabbing for years," Samantha whispered, "and nobody ever connected the dots." I finally understood why Petrov looked so afraid. Karen didn't just bully people. She erased them quietly. That night, someone slashed 2 of my tires in my own driveway. No proof it was Karen, but the timing felt anything but coincidental. I installed cameras the next morning, determined not to be intimidated into silence. Emma, watching me set them up, asked if the fence lady was truly dangerous. I told her the truth. Dangerous people rarely look dangerous, they just look confident. Karen, meanwhile, called an emergency HOA meeting to discuss concerning rumors being spread about her. She stood before the room, voice trembling with practiced hurt, calling me a liar and a troublemaker. Several neighbors nodded along, still trusting the woman who'd run their community for a decade. I said nothing that night. I let her talk. I already had better ammunition waiting. After the meeting, Priya texted me a scanned copy of her old survey dispute letter. It contained Karen's signature approving the exact same boundary correction language used against me. Patterns, once you see them clearly, are almost impossible to unsee again. I began preparing a formal complaint to the state's HOA Oversight Board, attaching every document I had. Samantha warned me it could take months and Karen would fight dirty the entire time. "She's cornered," Samantha said. "Cornered people get desperate and desperate people make mistakes." I didn't have to wait long to see exactly what she meant. Karen suddenly proposed a new HOA rule requiring board approval before any resident could file outside complaints. It was blatantly illegal, an obvious attempt to silence residents like me before the state got involved. The board, still loyal, voted to approve it anyway, 3 votes to 1. I stood outside that meeting, staring at the sky, wondering how deep this rot really went. Then my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A voice memo, no words, just recorded static and breathing. It felt like a threat with no fingerprints, exactly the kind of thing Karen would send. I forwarded the voice memo to Samantha, who immediately urged me to file a police report. The officer who arrived seemed unimpressed until I mentioned Karen Whitfield's name specifically. His expression changed instantly. "Her again," he muttered, jotting notes with new urgency. Apparently, Brookhaven's local precinct had quietly received several unrelated complaints about her over the years. None had ever gone anywhere, buried under her reputation as a respected community leader. That was the moment I understood Karen's real power wasn't legal, it was social. People believed confident voices over quiet evidence, and Karen had mastered confidence completely. I decided to change strategy. Stop arguing with her directly, start building an undeniable public record instead. 129. I requested a formal county hearing on the illegal electric fence, inviting every affected neighbor to attend. Priya flew in from 2 states away just to testify, which surprised even me. "I've been waiting 3 years for someone to finally push back," she told me at the airport. The night before the hearing, Karen left a single note taped to my mailbox. "Families who cause problems don't stay in Brookhaven long." It read, unsigned but unmistakable. Samantha photographed it immediately, adding it to our growing binder of evidence. At the hearing, county officials reviewed the fence, the survey, and the financial disclosures we'd gathered. Karen arrived in a tailored blazer, calm and composed, ready to charm the panel like always. She claimed the fence was a misunderstanding, blaming contractors for misreading old paperwork. Then Petrov stood up, unprompted, holding Frank Whitfield's original signed survey above his head. "This is the real map," he said, voice shaking but clear. "She's known about it for years." A murmur rippled through the room as officials passed the document between them. Karen's composure cracked, just slightly, a flicker no camera could have caught better than my own eyes. "That map is outdated," she snapped, louder than she probably intended. Then why? The county official asked. Does it match every deed on file except yours? The room went silent. Karen had no answer prepared for that particular question. 146. The panel ordered an immediate independent survey of the entire Whitfield property line. Karen demanded a private hearing instead, insisting this was becoming a public spectacle unfairly. The official reminded her that public hearings exist precisely for cases like this one. Outside, Priya squeezed my arm. This is more than I ever got, she whispered, tears in her eyes. That small comment reminded me how many families Karen had silenced before we ever met. The independent survey was scheduled for 2 weeks later, giving Karen time to prepare her next move. True to form, she didn't wait quietly for the results to come in. 154. She began a whisper campaign, telling neighbors I'd threatened her family over a simple fence dispute. 2 people I'd considered friends suddenly stopped responding to my texts entirely. Emma came home from a friend's house upset, saying the other kids called her dad a liar. That night, I nearly gave up, exhausted by how easily reputation could be weaponized against truth. Samantha reminded me that Karen only attacked reputations because the facts no longer favored her. She's not winning, Samantha said. She's panicking. Panic looks like confidence from far away. I clung to that thought as the survey date finally arrived. Surveyors walked the property with GPS equipment, laser levels, and county-certified precision instruments. Karen hovered nearby the entire time, offering unsolicited context nobody had asked for. By afternoon, the surveyor's flags told the same story Petrov's old paper map always had. My property line extended 3 feet past the fence, exactly where it had always legally been. Karen's fence, in its entirety, sat illegally on land she did not own. The lead surveyor delivered the news directly to her face, without softening a single word. Karen's jaw tightened, but she still insisted there must be some kind of mistake. There was no mistake. There was only years of quiet theft finally caught in daylight. I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for months. The county issued Karen a formal notice. Remove the illegal fence within 30 days. She appealed immediately, buying herself time, still refusing to admit any wrongdoing publicly. During the appeal window, Karen tried one final desperate move against me. She filed a lien on my property, claiming unpaid HOA boundary maintenance fees going back 2 years. Samantha nearly laughed reading it. She's inventing fees for land she never legally owned. We disputed the lien immediately, attaching the survey results as undeniable proof. The county clerk who processed it raised an eyebrow. This board president has quite a history. I asked what she meant. She simply said, check the archives sometime. You're not the first. That comment sent me straight to public records the following morning. What I found there would blow this entire conflict wide open. Buried in county archives were 3 prior lawsuits against Brookhaven's HOA, all quietly settled out of court. Each case involved a family, a disputed boundary, and a non-disclosure agreement sealing the details forever. Karen had settled every single time, right before discovery could expose her methods publicly. This time, I refused to accept any settlement offer, no matter how generous it might sound. Sure enough, within days, Karen's lawyer called offering to cover all damages if I signed quietly. I asked Samantha what she thought. It means she's terrified of what comes next, she said. I declined the settlement and requested a full public hearing before the state HOA board instead. Karen's lawyer sounded stunned. Nobody apparently had ever said no before. Word started spreading through Brookhaven once neighbors realized past families had been silenced with settlements too. Priya organized a small resident meeting in her old friend's garage, inviting anyone with a complaint. 12 families showed up. 9 of them had stories eerily similar to mine. 192. One woman revealed Karen had forced her elderly father to sell his home after a fabricated fine. Another man admitted he'd paid thousands in fake violations just to avoid Karen's constant harassment. Hearing it all together, out loud, made the pattern impossible for anyone to deny anymore. Samantha suggested we file a joint complaint representing multiple residents instead of just one. 9 families agreed immediately, finally feeling brave enough to stand together against her. Karen, sensing the tide turning, requested an emergency vote to remove me from the neighborhood entirely. She cited conduct unbecoming a resident, a vague clause she'd invented herself years earlier. The vote failed spectacularly, 7-2, once residents realized what was truly at stake. Karen stormed out of that meeting, visibly shaking for the first time since I'd met her. 2 nights later, my home security camera caught something I never expected to see. Karen, alone, sneaking into my backyard at midnight with wire cutters in her gloved hands. She wasn't there to remove the fence. She was there to cut my camera wires first. The footage clearly caught her face, lit by her own phone's flashlight, unmistakable and damning. I forwarded the video immediately to both the county and the sheriff's department that same night. A deputy called within the hour, asking me to preserve the original file untouched. By morning, Karen was formally questioned about trespassing and attempted tampering with evidence. She claimed she was simply checking on her property, though the footage told a different story. The lien, the settlements, the forged map, the trespassing. It all collapsed into one clear picture. The state HOA board scheduled an emergency review of Karen's presidency for the following week. Samantha helped me compile everything into a single, devastating timeline for the panel to review. Petrov, Priya, and 7 other residents agreed to testify publicly, no longer afraid of retaliation. The night before the hearing, Karen posted a tearful video online, calling herself a victim of mob mentality. It might have worked if the trespassing footage hadn't already been leaked to a local news station. By morning, my quiet HOA dispute had somehow become the top story on regional news. Reporters camped outside Brookhaven's entrance, filming the very fence that started everything. Karen refused every interview request, hiding behind drawn curtains as vans lined her street. The state hearing was moved to a larger venue to accommodate the sudden public interest. I sat in the front row, Emma's hand in mine, watching years of injustice finally reach daylight. The state panel opened with the trespassing footage, playing it silently for the entire room to see. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Karen's own face appeared, wire cutters glinting under moonlight. Her attorney tried objecting, but the footage had already been legally obtained and verified. One by one, residents testified. Forged surveys, invented fines, secret settlements, quiet threats. Priya's voice cracked describing her father's forced sale, and the entire room fell silent with her. Karen sat rigid, staring straight ahead, her earlier charm nowhere to be found now. When asked directly about the Boundary Maintenance Fund, she finally stopped denying everything. "I was protecting property values," she said quietly, as if that justified a decade of theft. The panel didn't buy it. Neither did anyone else in that crowded room. They voted unanimously to strip Karen of her HOA presidency, effective immediately, without appeal. The sheriff's department, separately, ordered the illegal electric fence demolished within 48 hours. I stood in my backyard the following morning, watching deputies tear down every post myself. Biscuit barked happily at the noise, as if he understood exactly what was happening. Karen watched from her porch, arms crossed, saying nothing as her stolen land disappeared post by post. Criminal charges followed soon after: trespassing, tampering with evidence, and fraud related to the maintenance fund. She sold her house within the month, leaving Brookhaven quieter and finally, genuinely fair. The 9 families who testified formed a new HOA board, with real transparency rules this time. Priya visited that spring, standing on the reclaimed grass where the fence once buzzed with danger. We hadn't just won back 3 feet of land. We'd won back an entire neighborhood's peace. Emma planted a small garden exactly where Biscuit had once been shocked, and it bloomed beautifully that summer.